Executive Member for Education, Libraries and Localism, Terry Hone, Community Safety and Waste Management, Tim Hutchings, Public Health and Prevention, Richard Roberts, Adult Social Care and Health, Ralph Sangster, Resources and Performance. We have apologies from Phil Bibby, the Executive Member for Highways, and he is substituted by his deputy, Eric Buckmaster. And we have apologies from Derek Ashley, the Executive Member for Growth and Infrastructure. Just before we start this meeting, I'm going to make an announcement in relation to the arrangements resulting from COVID-19. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Council will be holding this meeting electronically in accordance with the relevant regulations. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in an electronic capacity, and there is a link on the Council's website for them to do so. Members of Cabinet are asked to keep their microphones switched off until called to speak and to switch their microphones off once they've finished speaking. Cameras may be left on throughout the meeting if members wish. If you experience connection or other technical issues, it may help to switch your camera off. Cameras should be switched off if and when, cameras should be switched on if and when speaking in the meeting. To indicate a wish to speak, members should use the raised hand function. Use of the meeting chat function is exclusively for voting. At the end of the debate on each item of business, there will be a vote. Members should vote using the meeting chat function by indicating for, against, or abstain. I will declare the result after each vote. So the first item on our agenda are the minutes, and that's to confirm the minutes, both the Part 1 minutes and the Part 2 minutes of the meeting of Cabinet held on the 22nd of March 2021. Can I ask colleagues to indicate whether they are an accurate record? And for that purpose, let's use for, against, or a abstain in chat. Thanks, so those are agreed. The second item on the agenda are questions from members of the Council to executive members, and there are none. Agenda item number 3, public petitions, there are none. If I can remind members that all equalities implications and equalities impact assessments undertaken in relation to any matter on this agenda must be rigorously considered prior to any decision being reached on that matter. So the first substantive item is the report on Hertfordshire County Council's response to COVID-19. And I just want to say a really brief word of introduction about this. This covered the period when schools returned on the 3rd of March. Then there were the relaxation in the restrictions on the 29th of March, and now, of course, since the 12th of March, there has been the release in terms of non-essential retail. So quite a significant period represented and reported on in the report. I would urge anyone interested in the Council's response to pick up a copy of the report from the Council's website. A couple of things to highlight before inviting comments from colleagues. Firstly, this covers the period when we have refreshed the outbreak management plan. And so this was a requirement of Public Health England that we updated the management plan to reflect a period now when we are managing the response to the pandemic and have clearly gone into a different phase as we come out of lockdown. And so there's very much been a focus on testing, and I'd particularly highlight the imperative now for all residents to consider opportunities that they have to undertake rapid so-called lateral flow testing. For those who are involved in school bubbles and have children at school, they will, particularly in secondary schools, they will have already got used to the twice-a-week testing that's expected of them. But as life begins to return to normal, it's really important for all of our residents to recognise the importance of using rapid testing up to twice a week in order to determine whether they've been exposed to the virus or not. In the meantime, the rates of infection have come down drastically across the county and indeed across the rest of the east of England and the southeast in particular, which is hugely welcome. At the same time, the vaccination process has continued to roll out, and those of us who may have been able to catch the news over the last few days, what we've seen now is a huge increase in the number of people who are now getting their second vaccination, and there was over 400,000 vaccinated, as I recall, yesterday, as we go into a phase where both the age range of new people being vaccinated has been extended, but then those who've already had their first dose now are entitled to have their second dose. So, reflecting a really important period. The other thing to note is that the council's communications over this period. So these are the communications that have been developed in conjunction with our partners in health and then across local government. The so-called Play Your Part campaign in particular has been refreshed to reflect the situation following the release of non-essential retail in particular, and the fact that there are more people out and about. So I'm sure residents will have noticed that change in our campaigning in order to highlight the importance of testing in particular, but equally to still social distance and recognise the importance of social distancing. So I am going to invite comments from executive members, particularly those closely associated with our efforts. And in the first instance, can I turn to Teresa Heritage and then Ralph Sangster?
Thank you very much, Ida. I just wanted to update Cabinet colleagues on our holiday activities and food programme, our HAPPY programme, as you will all recall. The government provided a grant to local authorities for the delivery of free holiday places and the coordination of local programmes for children who meet the free school meal criteria to help families during this time over school holidays. The focus on the provision has been about including healthy food and enriching activities. And in the county of Hertfordshire, we have worked with partners, Hertfordshire Sports Partnership and the Hertfordshire Community Foundation to coordinate our activities for us. And over the Easter period, which was the first period that we were looking at, they did a terrific amount, and we didn't have very much time to get this up and running. But over the period, we've been able to offer 3 types of offers. We have an online offer for every single child who takes free school meals. There was well-being packs for those families who schools identified might need some additional help at home. And also there was an actual face-to-face offer, which we were able to offer because of the way restrictions and children going back to school. In relation to the online offer, which was offered through the Sports Partnership website, there'd be happy pages, and it pointed to lots of things that children could do. There were 2,308 page views, so families were using it, which is wonderful. I should say that we had about, I don't know about now, we had about 25,000 families who could access free school meals in the county, and our programme was aimed at sort of tranches of 5,000 families per day. So those were the online offer. The wellbeing packs, and we delivered 3,424 of those, which consisted of food, including ingredients for 2 meals of a family of 4, including a recipe card. So we were helping them through healthy eating, and there was some physical activity there, and that was either a football, a skipping rope with a counter, and some activity cards. And these were delivered via schools to children most in need and those who face the digital gap, because we were cognizant that not all families had access to online activities. We had about 94 schools respond to the programme, which was lower than we hoped, but we have to remember that schools were just going back and there was a lot going on, so there's a lot happening for schools. So I think that it was good learning for the Easter period. Hearts Full Stop, our own company, delivered the activities pack for us, and especially where it came to those families with children who had additional needs. The perishable foods in the wellbeing pack were provided by Hearts Catering Limited as well, and where we didn't use the food, that was delivered to food banks and hostels. And our face-to-face programme, which went off quite well actually, there were 3,196 places offered out of it, and we offered 5,700. So that wasn't bad take-up, again, because we weren't able to get out to all the schools and advertised as much as we'd hoped. But the Department of Education, who were watching us very carefully the whole time, thought that the delivery was great, and they said thank you for providing an up-to-date programme for the children over the holidays. So I think all in all, it went really well. There were lessons learnt, particularly around the booking system, which was online, but that's lessons learnt for the summer holidays. And obviously, with access to schools now, we'll be able to get the information out there even more. And consequently, we didn't use our whole budget for the Easter period, so we'll have a bit more to put into the summer term. So I'm very happy to answer any questions if anybody has queries, but I think the children had a good time. I've had feedback from children. I've got lots of pages to read, which I haven't read yet, but they really enjoyed it, and parents were really grateful. So thank you.
Teresa, thank you for that update. Ralph Sangster.
Thank you, David. I'd like to just refer to section 7 of the report, which relates to the financial position we find ourselves in during the COVID crisis, and looking forward to the post-COVID situation coming in the new year. But I thought it was worth reflecting a little on the overall position the council finds itself in terms of its finances, coming out of a year of extreme concern to us all, but having managed the situation, at least we look forward to a better future. The council's finances in general are extremely strong. We, unlike many other councils, have been managing our finances over the last decade and brought forward appropriate measures to maintain our strength and ensure that we deliver services to our residents. We have been lucky. We have this year in the budget been able to include substantial investments in infrastructure and sustainability, in service delivery, and most importantly in raising the level of low pay to above that of the living wage, which is an objective we had to ensure that we maintain our service delivery in adult social care, which depends greatly on those who are supporting our elderly, both at home and in care homes. And I'm sure Richard will have a word to say about that later. In terms of the COVID response, we've been managing our finances extremely well. The government have been providing us with funding for service delivery, and at the end of this current year, under 7.2 in the report, we are carrying forward a small surplus into next year. But under 7.7, you'll notice that we are able to carry forward even further funds which have been allocated to us through government and our own good husbandship of our finances. There's an approximately £34 million available to in the new financial year to cover any legacy costs in the COVID issues and help us to deliver not only the services which our residents are expecting, but also to perhaps contribute towards the recovery and the economy of Hertfordshire as well. So I feel that we are one of the best positioned councils in the country, both to manage our position and to look forward to supporting the residents and economy of Hertfordshire in the future.
Yes, and I think it's just worth. Thanks, Ralph. I think it's just worth underscoring that in terms of unring-fenced funding for our own operations, the County Council has received some 60 odd million, just in excess of 61 million from the government. As Ralph has said, we are providing for an additional 35 million in terms of having a fighting fund effectively to address some of the challenges that we know we're going to be facing as we come out of lockdown and as the economic situation crystallizes, particularly in terms of employment. But this reflects just part of a sum of in excess of 200 million, which the county as a whole has received by way of non-conditional grant funding and conditional grant funding to various organisations, and including some sums that we've recovered from the health service. So there's been a massive injection, but even still there are resources that we're earmarking for the current financial year, the year that started on the 1st of April, in order to address some of the issues arising from the pandemic. Richard, if I can turn to you.
Thank you, David. I just picking up on your last point about finances. I think it's so important that we've got those finances in place now, set into the budget, so that if they should be needed because we have an upsurge in infection combined potentially with flu, we're ready for whatever that throws at us in the late summer, autumn. And I know that health and social care colleagues are concerned that that is a potential. Right now, we're celebrating the fact that infection rates are really low and that we've got visiting going on in care homes. And if I could just thank the sterling work that has been done by care staff, not just in social care settings, which has just been exemplary, but also hearing this morning how the GPs and healthcare system has encouraged those who are reluctant to receive vaccinations, but they have gone ahead and done so quietly and making sure that those vaccination rates have gone up in those that were more reluctant to have them. I'm really impressed with some of the work that's happened between social care and health. And I think perhaps the legacy that I hope that we take forward to next year and beyond will be that we'll be able to work ever closer with health to ensure that we have efficient and effective health and social care across the county. I think that's so important. It'll help us deal with anything that gets thrown in our face. And just finally, to thank the other organisations like the Hertfordshire Care Providers Association and the voluntary sector organisations that have helped us get through the last year. It has been a torrid time. And we have had some significant support, not least, as you said, with government funding. And I think we are, as an organisation and with other statutory and non-statutory organisations across the county, we're ready for whatever comes our way. And maybe that's a good legacy at the end of a 4-year term and at the end of a year has been a really difficult one with COVID. Thank you, David.
Yes, and Richard, I just want to add my thanks to all of those people who've contributed, not just the County Council staff, but those across health and those across social care, and those voluntary organisations across the county who have really done such a brilliant effort in order to support the people of Hertfordshire. I'm going to turn to Tim Hutchings, the Executive Member for Public Health and Prevention. Tim.
Yeah, thank you, David. And as this is my last meeting, I hope you'll forgive me for a bit of reflection. Before I do that, and before I sort of, I think, shower praise on many of our public health colleagues, I think it's only right and proper actually to recognise that many of our residents have suffered tremendous difficulties and heartache over the last year or so, and that many will continue to do so. We're not out of the woods yet. I think I obviously think we've done a great job, but I think in saying that, I think it's important to recognise that some people have suffered and will continue to do so. So I'd like to recognise that. David, about 2.5 years ago, you asked me if I would take on this role. And little did you or I or anybody else know, for that matter, what was to come. But I'd like to thank you actually, because it's given me an opportunity to work with a fantastic group of people, and not just public health people, but people across the authority, other stakeholders, residents, volunteers, so on and so forth. Team Hertfordshire in the last year or so has really shown what it can do when it works together. And I think that's a fantastic thing. Public health, of course, touches the life of many people, but actually most of the things a local authority does touches the public health of many people. It's a cross-cutting thing. And the work we do, I think, to support the health and well-being of our residents, is really very important. So I'd like to make that point because I think it does get lost occasionally. It is important, and from everything I've seen, certainly from my cabinet colleagues, the one thing I would like to say to the people of Hertfordshire is we really do care. When I took on the role, as I said, you or I, none of us knew what was to come. But prior to the pandemic, I'd already gained a huge respect and affection actually for the people I work with in public health. I've rarely worked with a group of people who are so dedicated in what they do. The pandemic, of course, came along and really just served to confirm the view that I'd already formed. But as I said, before closing, I really would like to pay my respects to Team Hertfordshire. Whether it's the NHS colleagues, whether it's voluntary bodies, bodies in district councils, our own colleagues, etc., etc. I hesitate to do a full list because I know I'm going to miss somebody. But Hertfordshire really has pulled together very well, and we're going to come out of this very strongly. I think certainly from a public health perspective, we're already putting plans together to develop our health improvement services into a fully blown health and well-being service, and I think residents will see the results of that very shortly. So thank you for the opportunity of taking on this role. And just finally, I have to mention our Director of Public Health, who has done a fantastic job in supporting the people of Hertfordshire through this pandemic. And I think without his hard work and the hard work of his senior colleagues, we wouldn't be in such a great place today. So thank you very much.
Yes, and well, let me name check him, Jim McManus, who has been an outstanding servant to the Hertfordshire people over this period. Tim, I was going to at the end of the meeting, I was going to thank you and indeed thank Ralph Sangster for your contributions. But if I can just focus on you in the short term, you have, as you rightly said, we didn't plan the pandemic, but you have risen to the challenge enormously and have been absolutely key to supporting Jim in all that he does and providing that political input. And I'm very well aware of the countless webinars that you've done, the press briefings that you've done, being out on the streets of Hertsmere and Broxbourne as we've focused and targeted some of our testing and engagement with local residents. So I'm immensely grateful for your contribution, and I just wanted to recognise that at this meeting today. So thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you. I am blushing, and it's been easy with the team that's I've had to work with me. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Terry Douris, the Executive Member for Education, Libraries and Localism. Terry.
Thank you, David. It would be remiss of me not to appreciate the great teamwork that that Tim has, and indeed Ralph, but Tim has alluded to and mentioned, and the teamwork between the public health teams and our education teams and our frontline teams, whether they be in Hertfordshire at County Hall or working from home, but equally all those teaching staff, the school staff who have worked absolutely, it's an easy phrase to say, worked their socks off over the last year in the face of an unknown circumstance which hit them at the beginning of March last year. They have done a fantastic job, whether they be teachers, administration staff, facilities staff in schools. But also, I think I have to say that I appreciate very much the way parents have responded and the way children have responded, particularly our secondary school children. There were one or two little blips last summer, but we learned from those, or they learned from those. And I think the way they've conducted themselves in the recent months and throughout the year in the face of a really difficult time when they're in their adolescence, when they're growing and they want to be doing things and they have been curtailed from doing those, but they've got on and done their work. And there has been over the last few days reference to the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, which is a simply fantastic scheme introduced by the late Duke of Edinburgh, but equally has given young people an opportunity to excel, to shine and achieve. And I think that's such an important thing. And it sums up the spirit and the determination of all the people across the county. And those people in my particular area are not just in the education field, but in the libraries, in the archive section, very often working behind the scenes or not necessarily publicly obvious, but nonetheless have done a huge amount of work. It has been a real team effort. And I've worked very closely with Tim for a number of years now in different roles, but in the last 2 years, I would absolutely endorse everything that you've said. And I think an absolute vote of thanks goes to Tim for bringing it together. And it's been a pleasure from my perspective to be able to work with him.
Terry, thank you for that. And I think I saw a statistic earlier today that some 42,000 Hertfordshire young people have taken part in the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme over the lifetime of the scheme. So, and it's touched an enormous number of our people. So, in relation then to the COVID update report, we're asked colleagues at 4.1 in the order paper to note the content of the report. And so can I ask you to indicate in chat whether you are for, against or abstaining in relation to that proposal? So I think that's been agreed unanimously. Thank you for that. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, the recommissioning of overnight short break services for children and young people with special educational needs or disability. And if I can ask Teresa Heritage to introduce this, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Hertfordshire County Council commissions 3 settings to deliver overnight short breaks to children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, including those with complex health needs. The service provides a break for parents and carers whilst their children stay for a short amount of time in a safe and suitable setting. Having access to this support has important benefits to both carers and their children, helping the carer to continue to care for their child and providing the child with a change from daily routine and an opportunity to develop new skills and mix with peers. We were due to recommission back last year, so we had to put a halt to that given COVID. So we're into a new time frame now. But it actually gave us time to have a more in-depth conversation with users of the service, as we wanted to ensure that the service is consistent across the county, showing good quality and best value for everybody involved. This model that I'm putting to you today has been presented to the Children and Young People's panel, and it was unanimously agreed. It's a single service specification, building on comments gained from 2 sets of consultations, and will be retendered after this meeting. I'd like to make sure that colleagues recognise that the consultation has taken place with carers, our carer parent in HPCI, our parent carer forum, Hertfordshire Carers, every sort of group that might use or have access to this. And so everything we built into it has, I hope, been agreed by everybody that's likely to use it, most importantly, parents. So I'm recommending to you today those recommendations set out in the agenda. There's 3 of them. Let's take them as read. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa. Any comments, anyone, on the proposal? Eric?
Thank you, Leader. As I was reading the report, it all seemed very familiar to me because if you remember that, I think going back 2 years, I chaired a couple of the scrutinies following the Nascot Lawn situation, and I visited with members and with their families. I visited some of the settings, and so I'm really pleased to see that some of the themes that were discussed even then have followed through in the consultations, and particularly things like consistency of service on the east and west of the county, the flexibility around the local offer and direct payment, but also the potential for more community-based help. So again, I think from memory, we were saying we would get to this point. Obviously, we've been delayed a bit through COVID, but again, very pleasing to see where we've got to. So very much in favour of these recommendations.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Yes, obviously you saw it at the front line as well. Obviously, this new specification was built very much on what came out of the Nascot Lawn conversation, shall we say, and we work very closely with all those families that are involved. So I'm hopeful that everybody will be content now, and that we'll move forward and get a good provision. So I'll keep, well, Cabinet will be, the Cabinet will be informed as we go through the process, as officers go through the process.
Thanks, Teresa. So if there are no other comments, then can I invite colleagues to indicate in chat whether they're for, against or abstain, please? So that's been agreed unanimously. So just before we end, we've had the opportunity to thank Tim Hutchings for his contribution. We must also thank Ralph Sangster, because Ralph Sangster has chosen not to stand for another term as a county councillor. And Ralph, your contribution has really spanned I want to highlight your contribution across 3 areas. Firstly, in relation to the time when you were the executive member for highways, and you were particularly responsible for securing the additional 37 million that we've put into upgrading local roads. But then your time as executive member for resources and performance, where the strong financial position that we've seen at the end of this year in particular is testimony to your firm financial management of the council's finances. And the third area which I just want to highlight as well is your role as chairman of the Hertfordshire Local Government Pension Scheme, where I think it's fair to say that whilst you inherited a very strong position from the previous chairman, the position of the Hertfordshire Fund is in an even stronger position at the moment. So very warm thanks from certainly your cabinet colleagues. We will want to keep in touch and share with you how the council goes on from strength to strength. But I just wanted to express my sincere thanks for your contribution. And it's been particularly important, not just in terms of the financial management, but also those other areas which are part of the resources portfolio. Importantly, property and our investment in Hearts Living Limited, but then also the other areas such as IT, HR, and our legal services. So a big thanks from me, Ralph, for your enormous contribution over the last 8 years as a county councillor. Teresa.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, David. I'd just like to thank Ralph on behalf of Children's Services, actually, because he took a lot of time to understand how Children's Services operates. And as a result of that, we had a few words over time, but as a result of that, he supported our bid for developing our own residential care facilities, which is tremendous. I can't tell you, that is really going to have absolute wonderful impact for our children. Their outcomes will improve because we'll be able to bring them closer. So I know that the whole team in Children's Services was really grateful for that and all the other support that you've brought to Children's Services. So thank you very much indeed.
Ralph. Oh, you're muted.
Yes, sorry, I wasn't quite expecting the plaudits that you just cast upon me. I'm going to miss working with some of the most talented executive members that I think we can any council would be pleased to have. Richard, he's not standing behind you. I have to say I'm going to miss working with you guys. Also, I'm going to miss a very talented resources and performance team with Scott, Steve, and the others in the finance world. They have and their predecessors have managed, including Owen, who was my first director of resources. So they've all worked extremely hard and shown the talent that they have in managing the council's finances over the last 2 decades. I used to do a little bit of amateurmatics, so I'm rather keen to leave the stage with everybody wanting more rather than hanging on and wishing that I was everybody was wishing I would leave the stage before they could push me out. So I am going to miss you all. I guess I'll get past it though, and perhaps when I can get out of the country and get back to Portugal, I'll send you all a photograph of me having a quick pina colada by the pool.
Ralph, thanks for those comments, and I just want to say before we conclude that inevitably at a time like this is our last cabinet meeting before the elections on the 6th of May. It is a bit of a moment just to reflect on where we've come from. And if I can just make a bit of indulgence, I go back first and foremost to the Corporate Peer Challenge, so the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge of Hertfordshire County Council, which concluded that we were a robust and well-run, large upper-tier local authority with a strong culture of performance improvement. And it was absolutely great to receive that endorsement from some senior local government figures who conducted the peer challenge. I think we have demonstrated, and Ralph, you've particularly led on this, the commitment to sound financial management, which is at the heart of being enabling us to do what we want to do. And one of those areas where we've invested significantly are in the people services, where Richard, you and Teresa have been responsible for our adults and children's services. And, you know, our investment in supporting our vulnerable residents, whether it's children, the learning disabled, the physically disabled, or the frail and elderly, has been a real totem for this administration. And some of the plaudits that your areas have received over the last 4 years are testimony to the fantastic management that we have in those areas, but also the work that you've done in providing leadership. I talked about, Ralph, your investment that you drove forward in terms of highways, and in particular the unclassified roads across the county, the 37 million that we committed to that. Of course, not only have we seen that investment going into highways, one of the things that we've concluded over this 4-year period is the transformation of our streetlights to energy efficient LED lights, a huge capital programme across 100,000 plus streetlight columns. But again, a real example of just getting on and getting things done. Our approach to growth and the formation of the Hertfordshire Growth Board, the collaborative way in which we've been addressing that with our district and borough councils across the county, I consider a real success. It's raised our profile with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and I'm still hopeful that we can secure an advantageous arrangement, particularly in relation to affordable housing going forward. Richard, you've led the work on our relationship with the health community, in particular, and the National Health Service. I am really hopeful that when we have the Queen's speech next month, there will be a really strong commitment from the government in terms of the integration of health and social care. And we've already demonstrated our close working with the health community in Hertfordshire, and hopefully as we go forward over the next couple of years, we'll see some significant benefits coming from that. And then I must also highlight the commitment that we have made to being a net zero council, net zero across our council operations by 2030. And Teresa, the work that you've done on the Hertfordshire Sustainability Strategy, I think is groundbreaking, is going to be of critical importance to us, and our residents can expect a lot of emphasis on having a more sustainable Hertfordshire over the coming years as a result of the action plans that we've now put in place and some of the funding that we've secured in order to drive that agenda forward. So right across the piece, and you know, I can when I see Terry, I think of the investment that we've made in the household waste recycling centres, and Terry, also a big thanks to you for the collaboration between our fire and rescue service and the constabulary, which you have been instrumental in terms of driving forward. So I look back over the last 4 years and see a really positive track record of achievement. So I'd like to thank you personally for your contributions to that effort over the last 4 years. And on that note, if there is nothing else from you colleagues, I'll conclude the meeting, and no doubt we will get together again very soon. But thank you for your contributions this afternoon.
Thank you.